Hey everybody, welcome to another round of Make.com, but for people who want to make real money. I find myself in a random hotel room for the second time this week, but I'm not going to let that stop me from recording a high quality video on one of the most common use cases that I usually see coaching companies reaching out to me for, which is automating a large portion of their Slack communications. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to build an extremely viable automation that I use for my own business and that I sell to many other businesses that involves Instantly.ai, which is a cold email tool, Make.com, obviously, GPT-4, we're going to do some AI stuff, and then we're going to dump the results into a Slack message. So you're going to learn everything from start to finish. I'm going to make it as extremely simple as humanly possible. And now that you know about webhooks and about APIs, we have everything that we need to build this more complex system. If that sounds like something you're interested in, then stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in a sec. Okay, so what do we have here? In order for you to build this specific automation, you're going to need an Instantly.ai account. Now you don't need an Instantly.ai account. You can build out a very similar automation with any data source on the front end, whether it's like Facebook lead ads or I don't know, like Instagram messages or anything like that. I'm just using Instantly because my own agency gets a lot of leads through cold email. Well, at least we did until I started recording YouTube videos all day. And you know, Instantly has a bunch of very simple systems set up to allow us to basically just like send a new request every time a reply is received in response to one of our campaigns. So if you're unfamiliar with Instantly, it's just a cold email tool. You can set up campaigns and sequences and that sort of thing. Stuff like, you know, this, for instance. And then you can add basically unlimited mailboxes on the front end here. So you can say I have like 15 or 20 mailboxes set up. And then you can distribute like email volume across those mailboxes. So extremely valuable tool. Not going to harp on this too much because I have several videos out on this, but yeah, check it out if it's the first time that you're hearing about it. Now, the specific flow we're going to be building today is going to look something like this. So we're going to use a webhook to catch incoming replies from Instantly, and they have a feature that allows you to do that, which is nice. We're then going to use AI to filter the email. And you can imagine how if you're using a simpler sort of data source, like maybe Facebook lead ads or something like that, you're not going to need to do any filtering because odds are you just want to like forward a lead to a Slack channel or something. But in my case, I want to make sure to only forward new responses that are high quality and new responses that are interested to that Slack channel. Because realistically, you get like 30 or 40 or 50 email responses a day. Then we are going to do a little bit of parsing. It's the first time we're going to use like procedural parsing, which is going to be fun. And then if you know it's like not an unsubscribe message, basically we're going to shoot over a Slack message using a specific type of formatting called Slack blocks formatting. And I'll dive into what that looks like later, but I am just going to be copying this down because it's sort of a pain in the ass to build from the ground up. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. And let's get started with the first part of that build, which is probably the simplest, which is just connecting with the webhook. So I'm going to call this, well, I'm just going to call this because that's basically exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to copy over that name, and then I'm just going to call it like example lead capture, just to differentiate between the two. First thing I'm going to do is click on this little button and then type webhook. This is going to open up the webhooks module, and then I'm going to get custom webhook. And then I'm going to add a new module or a new webhook called, let's do new instantly reply, and then I'll just call it example build. And then I'll also say February 23rd, 2024. I'm going to copy that address to my clipboard, and then I'm going to go over to Instantly. Now, Instantly has that feature where I can set up webhooks. I don't remember where it is, though, so we're going to find it together. Okay, integrations. That sounds pretty good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so it looks like they now actually have like a direct Slack integration, which is pretty cool. We don't want to do that, though. We want to do webhooks. You'll see they have a bunch of other features. They have like API key, so you could screw around with the Instantly API if you want. You can do direct Zapier integrations. It looks like they have some OpenAI stuff now, which is maybe where like they can automatically respond for you and all that sort of thing. But we're going to use this webhook feature, so I'm going to click Add Webhook, paste in the webhook URL, and then down here you can select the campaign that you have specifically. So I'm just going to use test campaign because we're not actually going to receive a response over the course of this email. And then you'll see down here there are a bunch of events that we can choose. So the good news about Instantly is you can select, you know, fire a webhook every time an email is sent. So maybe you want to do something like update a record in your CRM to show that an email is sent. You can do email bounced, email opened, although I actually never track email opens. That's a topic for another video. link clicks, reply received, lead unsubscribed. And then there are a bunch of sort of like automatic AI tools where Instantly will try and evaluate whether or not the lead is interested. I don't use this because I find it's usually much worse than something that I could design on my own. So what I always do is I'm just doing reply received. Okay, great. So I added the webhook. Now, what is this going to do? This means that anytime somebody replies to one of my sequences, I'm then going to have a webhook with the reply from that email that I'll be able to use. Like I'll have like the reply text, I'll have all that information, which I'll be able to use to like build out the rest of my flow. And the end result is it's going to be something like this. And I only know this because I built this specific flow out. But I'm using an app called LeftClick, which is just my own internal Slack app. It says Nick just generated a warm lead. So salesperson just generated a warm lead with like some confetti. There's a link to the unit box from Instantly where somebody can click through and then manage this. And then there's like a message from this person. So it looks like this lovely person, Themba. I'm totally going to butcher that last name, but offered to let me give them a call on November the 28th, 2023, which is back when I was running the specific campaign. And because of the Slack block formatting, you can see how it's spaced out nicely. We're using like header tags and that sort of thing. This is basically what we're going to be moving towards. But anywho, so great. So we have that webhook set up. Now, I don't know if Instantly has a testing feature. I don't believe that they do, which is sort of unfortunate because it would be nice to be able to test this webhook flow. So what I'm going to do here is the next step is we're going to add a GPT-4 sequence, so a completion sequence. Right over here, and then we'll do this. So you're going to have to add your OpenAI API key as a connection if you haven't done that already. And then the method that we're going to be using is create a chat completion, which is just sort of back and forth speaking with these models. Now, I find that using the GPT-4 endpoint, just the one that says GPT-4, is usually a little bit shitty. The reason why is because if you just use like the base GPT-4, it'll always default to the newest version. And OpenAI has sort of vested self-interest in reducing their internal costs, so they will always try and shunt you on like the shittiest version of GPT-4 available. So it's usually like GPT-4 Turbo. The quality of this model is just less. I mean, it costs you less to use, but the quality is less. So if you wanted to do things that are maybe a little bit more cognitively or computationally demanding, I'd always recommend picking a specific version and then building a prompt and optimizing a prompt for just that specific version, and then worrying about changing it later. Because every version that you choose, you're basically going to have to like prompt optimize from the ground up again. But anywho, you can see how there are a bunch more down here, like GPT-4 0125 preview, GPT-4 0314. That's not deprecated. I used that for a long time. 0613, 32K. I mean, by the time you guys are watching this video, it'll probably be quite different. But let's see what I used back here. Okay, so my dumbass did just use the base GPT-4 model. So despite all that poetic I was just waxing, I'm just going to end up using it anyway. The role of the first line of messages is going to be system. I'm just going to copy over my prompts from here because I'm cheating and I'm a little bit lazy. Also, I've been sleeping like 4 hours a night. Something about just like the Toronto skyline, man, it's so bright. And I don't have blackout curtains in this hotel. The second prompt is going to be user prompt, and you can sort of infer what this is doing, but I'm just saying, hey, below is an email reply to an outbound campaign. I want you to categorize it into one of the following outcomes: positive, not interested, or unsubscribe. If they ask a question or don't fall into any of the other categories, just write interested. And my idea is what we're going to do is if somebody is really pissed off at us and they're saying, hey, fuck you guys, I don't want to talk to you ever again, stop emailing me. Well, obviously we don't want to send them an email again, right? So we're just going to auto unsubscribe them, and we want GPT-4 to be able to pick up on that. But if somebody is like, hey, this sounds pretty interesting, I'm just not super into it right now, I need another 6 months, and then our business will be able to align priorities on this. We still want to like log that as something, and then we want to maybe just have them available for a follow-up sequence later. And that's what my not interested status is. If they are interested, and if they want to book a call or something like that, then obviously GPT-4 is going to understand that that is a positive reply, and all positive replies are replies that are going to be forwarded over to the Slack, so that a salesperson or maybe somebody just in charge of monitoring, like customer success manager, whatever coaches define their roles as, will be able to see it. And usually this is a lot better than just having somebody in charge of an email inbox, because in an instant messenger, I don't know what it is. It's like a psychological thing, but it's also just like a notification thing. People are just much more likely to respond. The average response time on an instant messenger is like a quarter of what it is through email. So we're attempting to get these positive replies, to pump them into Slack, and then just have somebody be notified. And that's how I'm going to do it. Next up, I'm going to provide some examples of what the email body is going to look like. And so in my case, I'm going to go back and do another user prompt. So it's going to be user instructions up here, and then user and assistant pair responses. And you'll see how my first example was, hey, Nick, yeah, for sure, this sounds like it has potential, Peter. You'll see I'm using new lines here. New lines, this is just like a way that both GPT, but also a lot of email clients understand new lines. And if you think about like a new line, really like in an email, it will say something like this. Hi, Nick, yeah, for sure, this sounds like it has potential. But I'm attempting to compress the message that's being sent, and I'm also just attempting to account for, maybe email services that replace all actual new lines with this new line character. If that doesn't make sense to you, then don't worry too much about this. It's just a minor optimization, but it's what I do to ensure that things go well. And then afterwards, I'm just going to train it on what I want the assistant to think. So in this case, I want it to see a response like this, and then I want it to be like, that is a positive reply. And you can see the way that I'm doing it is with the JavaScript object notation, where I'm having the assistant respond and say category positive. And this is really important. I want it to respond in JSON because I want to be able to parse that message in JSON later. Now, I don't just want to do one example, I want to do several. So I'm going to have another response that just says no and stop emailing me. Take a wild guess as to what category I want the assistant to respond to that with. Obviously, unsubscribe. And then I'm going to do a couple more. I'll do a user one that says, hey, Nick, what did you have in mind? And then it'll be from this lovely Simone person. And I want to count that as positive as well, because if somebody's asking a question, odds are, they probably want to continue the conversation in some respect. And then this one, I want to do like a not interested one. So this is a longer message that says, hey, Nick, apologies for the delay. I had some last minute travel. I don't think I'm the best person for this, but I'll pass on your request, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll just write not interested from the assistant. And then now I think I have everything I need to know just to go straight to the user prompt. You can see how on my actual flow, I have like 5 or 6 different prompts. And I'm just being as, as thorough as possible. And I was willing to spend more money in tokens to have this sorted back then. But nowadays, I'm not really worried too much about this. This is an example flow. I was receiving like 50 or 60 responses a day at the time, so I did really enjoy having AI filter the ones that were negative, of course, both for my sanity and also for my time, but is what it is. Now, what you'll notice is if you click on the message content, because we haven't actually received a webhook yet, we don't actually have an example of what the data looks like. Here's a quick hack that you can get, that you can use to get around this. And I don't want you to rely on the hack, but I'm going to show you the hack anyway because it saves me a lot of time. And now that I'm sort of experienced with make.com, I can kind of get how this works under the hood. I didn't understand this for probably like 6 months. So if you're before 6 months and you're learning this, consider yourself better than me at the point that I was at in my career. But I'm also going to show you how to like do it normally and how like you should do it. The only reason why I'm sort of hesitant to show you, or the reason why I'm showing you these 2 methods is because Instantly historically has had sort of a slow webhook response where it can lag for like 2 or 3 minutes, and I just didn't want to have to sit here and just wait for 2 or 3 minutes on camera. So here's the hack. If you know what the variable is called, so for instance, this is the old flow that I built out, and you see how it's called reply_text. If you know what the variable is called, and if you know the number of the module, which in our case is 9, even if you don't have a selector over here in this star, you can still recreate this, and you can have this selected on the first run. What do I mean by this? Well, if I just try to copy this from my other scenario and then paste this in, you see how it's black, and it says 9.replyText? Well, black just means that module doesn't exist. However, I do know that the module 1 exists. So this one's called module 9, but in my flow that I'm currently working on, it's module 1. So the way that Make does this under the hood is they have a format that looks like this. It's curly brace, it's the number of the module, so in my case 1, and then it's a period, and then it's the name of the variable, reply text, and then it's curly brace. So you see how now this one's red, but it's sort of hollow? Red, or having an outline, but then the inside not being filled, just means that it's a variable that is connected to a module that exists, but we don't know if the variable exists. Now obviously in our case, we know that the variable reply text exists because I used it in a previous module. But that's how you get around selecting things from previous modules that may or may not actually be Sorry, I think I just like switched back and forth 5 times. That's how you get by selecting data from a previous module that may or may not actually be accessible to you on the right-hand side. So like, my mind is very familiar with how make.com works now. So if you've noticed in previous videos, a lot of the time I'm like trying to reconnect the two modules to like get it to show the variables on the right-hand side. A lot of the time I don't even do that anymore just because I know, okay, I'm looking for, module number dot variable underscore name most of the time. And it's pretty self-explanatory and pretty simple to push through. Anywho, so that's what that looks like. I know that this works, so I'm just going to press enter here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write, I'm going to click run, oops, not run once. I'm going to run over here, and then I'm just going to add in like a random reply text just to test my model. And usually you should test this probably like 4 or 5 times just to make sure that your prompt is good enough and you have a reasonable enough success rate. I know that this works pretty well, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. First one I'm going to write is just fuck off, and I'm going to see if it says unsubscribe. It should. So choices, message, get category, unsubscribe. Great. Second one, I'm going to say, hey, Nick, this sounds great, man, but we're just a little busy right now. Maybe follow up in a few months, okay? And then I'm going to say, and Peter. Pretend that Peter is sending this. Now, this is sort of a tricky one because I said this sounds great, so it's not completely unsurprising that instead of us categorizing this as not interested, which is what I initially wanted to categorize as interested, in my case, this is okay. I would still want like a salesperson to get a notification like this and then maybe create a follow-up in their calendar or something like that. But anywho, the last one is just going to be very simple. I just want somebody to be like, this sounds awesome. Or let's do this is awesome. I'd love to talk, call me, and then I'll just put a random phone number. This should obviously be interested. So let's go choices, one, message. Category is positive. I don't think we have a category called positive, so that's unfortunate. No, we do have a category called positive. What we don't have is, oh, yeah. I actually screwed up the prompt here. I should have said write positive, not interested. Previously I had write interested, and I got a little bit confused. So yeah, I'm going to put positive down here as a catch-all. My bad. I'm going to copy this just so that I have it, and then I'm actually going to go back to my original prompt here, which was clearly edited, and then I'm going to save that just for next time. Okay, great. So now that I'm pretty happy with how this thing works conceptually, I'm going to try and email myself once with this test campaign, which is sort of annoying to do, but let me first select all the leads. I'm going to delete all these leads. Add a new lead. We're going to enter my own email manually. And then I'm going to import the emails. Oh, it already exists across campaigns. That's annoying. Let's just do my actual Gmail. The reason why is because I want this to trigger, and then I want us to be able to see what the text looks like. So let's see, I added one lead in this sequence. That's my personal email. And then I have one email in this sequence with the first name, and then that's basically it. I don't have a company name, I don't think, in my lead. Let's write your company. Okay, and then I'm going to click save and then launch. Oh, and then I'm going to select a bunch of accounts here. That's the last thing I have to do for Instantly. So let's do that, and then click launch. This will now publish my campaign. Okay, great. So this is being sent. I do only have one lead here that says not yet contacted. And as I mentioned earlier, it can be, I don't know, it can be sort of 50-50. It doesn't always work immediately, and sometimes Instantly takes its time. So regardless, now that that's chugging along in the background, hopefully by the end of the video, we'll get a response from this, and then I'll be able to show you guys that variable without this hacky sort of workaround. All right, so next up, after we've categorized the email, what we need to do is we need to post it to Slack, basically. But I want to do a couple things before I do that. I want to isolate a few variables. I want to parse some text that's coming in, and just generally, get all of the text and everything like that in a format that is ready for Slack. So I'm going to do two things. Number one is I'm going to add a JSON parse JSON module. So you have to go to JSON here. And then, so you have to write JSON. Inside of the JSON umbrella, there will be a parse JSON module. what this does is anytime that you have text that's in a format that is JSON, and so that's what this looks like. It's a curly bracket. It's usually quotes around some type of key, and then if it's a string, there'll be quotes around the value. Sometimes it can be an integer, so it might just be a number, and then it can also just be true, false, null, some special variables like that. But what this does is basically if the variable is in this format, then we can actually turn it into a make.com accessible variable, like one of those little boxes with like the number 14 dot reply underscore text, and then we can access it in the rest of the campaign. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and then I'm going to feed in the content, which is this JSON string. And then just for simplicity, I'm also going to copy this over, and then we'll just test this. So I'll show you what this looks like. So I'm going to copy over this text, and then I'm going to click OK here, and then I'm actually going to run this. We're just going to paste this all the way down here. And you'll see that the parsed version of this is a variable called category with a value called positive. So it's more or less what we want, which is nice. You'll see that there's a little like 1 aside from this because it's telling us that a transformer should not be the last module in the route. That's okay. That's just like it saying, hey, you're not actually doing anything. All you're doing is just like parsing text and then outputting it in make.com. Anywho, so we've parsed the JSON from the OpenAI module now, so this text, this positive is actually accessible. And what that means is now we can use it in filters, we can use it in routes, and we can use it in basically the next step. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose a Slack module because it's time for us to dump this into Slack. And you'll see it says beta. So I guess it's still sort of under development. But what I want to do is I want to create a message. And I'm just going to go over here and see if there's any special. No, we did use the Slack module for this. So I'm going to click create a message, and I'm going to drag this over here. You have to connect your Slack instance or your Discord instance, works the exact same way, or maybe any of your other instant messaging instances here. Easiest way to do so, click add, just do Slack bot. That's like the Integromat bot. Integromat is the name that make.com used to have before it swapped to make.com. And then you actually have to like sign into your Slack instance and do all that tough, hard work, which is sort of annoying. You have to like select all of the availability, all of the available permissions here. And it's sort of annoying, but I'm part of a bunch of Slack workspaces, so I'm not actually going to like open this up and show you guys how to connect because I don't actually have like the authorization to do the connection, unfortunately. But afterwards, you'll end up with basically a connection here that I'm just calling left click Integromat because it's the name of my Slack group. Sometimes I think you have to invite a user called Integromat or an app called Integromat. So you may have to do that before you complete the connection. If you don't do a bot, and then if you add it as a user instead, then you could just log in as the user that you want. The unfortunate thing is though, then every time you get a message in, let's say, your sales chat, it'll just be the user that you connected as. So if I connected as Nick, then it would basically say Nick Sarayev, and I would be talking sort of every time that we trigger that webhook. And so, in a bigger and more professional company, you probably don't want to do that. For enter a channel ID or name, I'm just going to select from the list. Slack allows you to select from 2 different types of channels, the public channels and the private channels. I guess there's also an instant message channel or multiple instant message channel, but in my case, the sales chat is a private channel. That's why it has a lock over it. And so the idea here is like we only wanted people in the sales chat that are explicitly invited to the sales chat to be able to see the messages in the sales chat. Sort of makes sense, right? Because a lot of the information there is a little bit more personal, a little more private. If we gave a list of leads to just a random person at our company, maybe it would be a little less secure. And then for the text, so this is pretty interesting. There are 2 different ways that you could do this. You could start with text, and I'm going to show you an example of text. Text is just what it sounds like. It's just plain text. You can't do any formatting. You can't make it look pretty. You can't do anything like that. But obviously, it's a quick and dirty. It's just a simple way to get up and running. But Slack in particular also has a format called their block builder, which is sort of like their own markdown format sort of deal. It's just a way that you build out like a much more beautiful and a much more complex user interface. And they actually offer a feature that allows you to do this called the block kit builder. And so if you navigate over to the block kit builder, you'll see it's like a big helper tool that allows you to like create your own block messages and format them correctly and whatever. You may need to be signed in to do this now that I'm thinking about it, which is why my screen's blank. Alternatively, my internet may be shitty. I don't know. So I'm going to load that while I just write test. Then I'm just click run this module. And And then I'm going to go back to sales, and you'll see that Integromat bot just wrote test. That's the default. That's what it looks like before you do any customization. If you go down to advanced settings, you scroll all the way down, you got a bunch of settings over here. I don't really use any of them. The only one I'll use is use Markdown because I want to be able to write in Markdown. And then you can choose the emoji for this image. And so if you go to like Imager and just pick like whatever picture you want, you can change that. If you don't choose an emoji, you can also choose an icon. I don't really fully know what the two differences are here. And then you can change the username. So in my case, I'm just going to call this example company name. Let's see, and then let's try this again and show you guys what it looks like. So now it says example company name, which is pretty cool. Okay, great. It looks like the Slack block kit builder loaded. This is more or less what a block will look like after you do your formatting and after you spend your time and energy working on it. You can see it's a lot more complex than just using text. So if this is your first time doing it, just slap some text on there and call it a day. If you do want to get more complex though, if you wanted to write out a message that looked like this, for instance, with formatting and images on the side and star emojis and a bunch of information, you'd basically have to work through this. And there are a bunch of templates that are simple and sort of one click. So if you wanted it to look like this, for instance, with an approve or a deny button, just click use the message template. And then you have just a bunch of text that you can just copy and paste into Make. But in our case, I actually already have a flow that's not completely fully developed, but it's like reasonably good with all of that formatting in there that I'm just going to copy over. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to remove the text, and then I'm going to change the variables. So as you see here, there's like a block, and the first type is header, and the type is text, and it says Nick just generated a warm lead. If I go back to Slack, you'll see that corresponds to this, right? So it's just their own custom formatting. It's not a big deal whatsoever. So there are a couple of, let's see if Instantly sent out my campaign first, actually. Might be a time thing now that I'm thinking about it, because I think my schedule is probably out of commission here. We go back to analytics and check out activity. Yeah, no. There's no email here, which is unfortunate. There's no way I can just like directly send an email. I unfortunately just have to drip it out. So I'm just going to leave that. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to access the variables directly using the same trick that I just showed you guys. So the first variable of interest for us is first name and last name. When the webhook comes in through the Instantly response, it includes a few variables like the first name, the last name, the reply underscore text, another variable called reply underscore text underscore snippet. And so we're just going to use all of those. So if I want to access the first name and I can't actually just go to the right here and click it, I'm going to go left curly bracket, left curly bracket. I'll write the number of the module that I'm interested in. So if I scroll over here, you'll see that says 1. Then I'll write 1. Then underscore, then period, sorry, and then I'll write first, I think it was no underscore, so first name, then a right bracket, done, and then left curly 1 dot last name, right curly. Awesome. So see here how it's turned red, and there's an outline, but there's no fill-in. That's because, again, I'm accessing a variable that it knows the module of that variable exists, but it doesn't know if the variable does itself. And then underneath that, what it looks like I'm doing is I am getting a variable called reply text snippet, which I guess is just a short version of the reply text, and that would be this. And then it is replacing the reply text snippet's quotes with a single quote, and then it's replacing the output of that with a new line. So we'll test this in a second. But suffice to say, that's what that looks like. And then the last part is it looks like there's a direct link to Instantly down here, and then there's a heading called sequence, and that's what that is. So I'm just going to leave this for now because I don't think it's hyper relevant. To get into how this works, basically, if you imagine the reply text snippet has quotes around it and says, "Hey Peter, how are you doing?" The first replace will take that text, and then it'll replace all double quotes with single quotes. And then the next replace will replace any new lines here with a \n. And so you can imagine how maybe there's supposed to be a new line here, so just replace that with \n. And then this is the completed text that's coming into this text section. Now, from a bird's eye view, just because I sort of remember what was going on here, it looks like the reply text snippet had a bunch of double quotes. And if you look at the way that the block formatting is done, it's like double quote around a variable double quote. So what probably happened is we had double quotes right next to double quotes, which sort of screwed with the formatting and then led to like a 400 error or something. So I'm solving for that here. And then the new lines being replaced with the /n's. I know for a fact that Slack actually just doesn't use new lines. They use \n's to represent new lines. And what that means is in order for me to get this nice look, I had to like embed a bunch of hidden new line characters right after every line. So I imagine that's how that worked. But anywho, let's do this now. Let's just run this with a bunch of variables. Let's do Peter, we'll do Wick, and then the reply text snippet. Let's just copy over this thing, paste that in there. Let me see if I could do, it doesn't look like I can actually add new line characters here, so it's probably just going to be all in one line, but let's click OK. Let's see how it looks. Okay, great. So Nick just generated a warm lead. That's what we wanted. We have a link to the Instantly Unibox, and then we have the text down here, which is called the reply text snippet, and then we have the sequence instantly main. Awesome. So that's looking like it's working as intended, which is quite nice. There is one more thing that I wanted to implement and just show you, and that's a text parser, and then I'll put in the filter, and then that'll be it. It looks like there is a variable called lead email, which we need to parse, which is sort of annoying. So let me see if I can grab some history from this. Okay, it looks like there's one record in the queue waiting to be processed. So maybe we can actually run this on a live record and then get the data that way. Okay, looks like in this specific case, we had a really, really long email. And in order for this to work, the reply text needs to be less than 3,000 characters. And yeah, I'm looking at the email that came in. It's like super long. But it's good that this example jumped in because you guys can now actually see all of those variables that I was talking about earlier. So when Instantly sends you that webhook, it'll have a timestamp, it'll have an event type, it'll have workspace ID, campaign ID, all that stuff. But you'll see that there's also the email account that it was sent to. So that's where the reply was sent to. There's then reply text snippet. There's a lead email, which has the email of the lead. Another variable called email. There's website, last name, first name, as we've already seen. There's profile URL, company name, reply subject. So you can imagine how you can do a ton of stuff with this. You could theoretically pump in the LinkedIn URL to a scraper, grab the profile picture, and then use that profile picture in the message that you send over so that maybe, I don't know, your sales team just gets a little bit more enriching of an experience. You can do a ton of stuff. Now, what we're doing here specifically is we're basically, in this text parser, Instantly does not provide the website that they are hosting with in the email or in the webhook back to you. And so if we go back here, you'll see there's no website variable. And I really wanted to like get the website just for my own purposes and maybe just as a way that like we could quickly jump on their website first. Okay, I lied. There actually is a variable called website. I think they've just added this, so there wasn't. And so what I used to have to do is I used to have to parse the lead email out and then use that to get just the website domain, which in this case is eric@widefolk.us. I basically had to match just this section here. And so I'm going to do that again just because I think that it's an important skill to learn because we haven't actually done anything like that before. We've just used AI to like quick and dirty do parsing and stuff like that. So I'm just going to drag in this text parser module. And then what I'm going to do is explain how exactly this works. So the text parser module implements what's called regex. Regex is just a language, just like Python or JavaScript or something like that. It's just this language is solely set up to allow you to isolate different components of the text, basically like manipulate strings. And so in regex, there are a bunch of options that you'll always have. You can choose whether it's a global match or a local match. If it's a global match, it'll go across the entire string. If it's a local, it'll stop at like the first instance of that and then only bring back the first. You can check case sensitivity. You can check multi-line. Sometimes there are beginning and end characters, which is a little bit complex and unnecessary to understand. There's single line. And then there's a variable here that says, do you want to continue the execution of the read even if the module finds no matches? You're almost always going to want to click yes to this. The reason being is because if for whatever reason your regex fails or something like that, or you can't get the data, if that is no, then the module just won't proceed past that point. And I've probably spent like a solid 10 hours of my life just staring at like a massive make flow with like 50 modules and being like, why the hell isn't this thing moving? Only to like later realize it's because there was a tiny issue with one of the regexes at the very beginning. So save yourself the time. Don't be dumb like me. Just keep going while you're debugging. And then if you need this to be no at the end, just switch it to no at the end. Now, the pattern that we're going to be doing is really simple. It's just going to be an @, and then there are going to be two brackets here. There's going to be a left normal bracket and then a right normal bracket, and it's going to be around a period, and then I think that's called an asterisk, right? Yes. And so if you imagine, if the email that we're attempting to parse is like hello@gmail.com, basically what this is going to match is it's going to match any string that has an @ in it, and then anything basically after that. Now, you'll notice that there are these brackets surrounding this period and then this asterisk. Well, the way the brackets work is brackets are basically what allow you to pull data out. So I think they're called match groups. So you can pull out a match group, and then that'll be like a variable in make that you can manipulate. And so I'm probably not doing this as much service as I should be, but if you just wanted to select one specific part, then what you do is you'd have some identifier at the beginning. So in our case, like we're only ever really going to see an @ in an email here. And then, we sort of have brackets around the thing that we care about, which is that gmail.com. The period and then the asterisk is just sort of shorthand for everything. And so I think the period stands for any character whatsoever. And then the asterisk, if I'm remembering correctly, just stands for repeated as many times as possible. And so what we're really telling it in natural language to do is, hey, I want you to find the first instance of an @, and then I want you to find any character after that that repeats an infinite number of times, and then I want you to just take that character, take that string, and then pull it out for me. And you can imagine how in an email address, what happens after that @ is just the URL of the website. So that's how I was pulling the website out, and then the website enabled us to do something, which I don't entirely remember what. Maybe I was just storing that for my own purposes at the time. Anywho, for the purposes of this, I'm just going to say extract website and just call it what it is. So yeah, that's more or less it. That's a very simple flow that allows us to categorize incoming requests with AI and then use that to post basically to an internal team dashboard. This is super high throughput and really useful if you're running like a coaching company, or if you're running really any sort of business in which you need to be able to respond to lead inquiries very quickly. What normally happens in a lot of these coaching companies that I've seen that do like 200, 300, 400K a month is they found that product market fit and it works really well, but then they just start dumping all their messages into like a Slack without any sort of proper management or proper operations, and that can quickly go out of control. And so that's something that like I'm usually called over to fix. It's like, hey, instead of just dumping all these Slack messages in here, we still want to dump them in here, but we just want a system where they can get managed. And so an example system like that might be, if you guys remember back to the Slack block kit builder, there's you have a new request, type whatever, and then approve or deny. Well, like a common workflow that a lot of coaching companies or a lot of companies that have to deal with inquiries quickly need something like this, where like, let's say a new Facebook lead comes in through like Facebook lead ads or something, you get the information, you post it to Slack, and then there's like an accept or like a reject or something. And then if a salesperson clicks accept, then maybe it'll send the lead, a quick text message that's templated that'll allow them to quickly get in touch with the lead. Or if we click reject, then maybe it'll like change a record in our CRM so that the salesperson just doesn't have to worry about that lead anymore. Maybe they're unqualified, something of that nature. And this is just a much more like scalable way to manage these sorts of inquiries, especially when you're getting to the point where you get like one every 5 minutes. Like a lot of these big coaching companies have Slacks that are like every minute there's a $30,000 or $40,000 lead. So anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed me waxing poetic in this hotel room. I'm pretty sure it's gotten noticeably darker since I started recording this, so hopefully y'all can still see my face. If you have any questions about the way that this works in practice at like a real coaching company or a real agency that's managing leads, please let me know. Again, the whole purpose of this course series is just to teach you high ROI skills between software platforms that people actually use when they're building out revenue systems and things that make money. So if there are systems that, maybe these are similar to systems that you use, but they're not the exact same sorts of systems that you use, that's okay. Just use the stems of what I've showed you to build out your own that are hopefully more complex and hopefully even higher ROI, rather than try and like mimic exactly the app platforms that I'm using and that sort of thing if they don't really fit your use case. Okay, great. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much. See you later.